Good morning.
Who's going to China?
Oh, me.
Really, when?
I'm going to be recorded there.
Really?
Yeah. It's going to be great.
You're going to move someplace where they appreciate you? What did you say?
All right.
I'll continue being mouthpiece for the Communist Party.
But I'll send postcards.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Attach a little pearl bracelet to it. They have good pearl
pieces this morning.
Thank you for noticing. I was a little rushed this morning. Y'all ready? Mm-hmm. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Before I take questions, I want to take a brief moment to discuss preparations for my next budget that my administration will be putting forward. As many of you know, we recently announced that the city is projected to have a $15 million budget deficit next year. While we have certainly confronted much larger deficits in the past, it's important to remain vigilant in keeping our fiscal house in order and continue the progress we've made in Baltimore City. So together, we have closed a historic budget deficit the first year I took office. You know, just saying it out loud is giving me flashbacks, while reducing property taxes and avoiding significant cuts to services important to city residents, which was always very important to me. I think the best thing we can do as we try to shrink government is to ensure that we continue to provide the services that will allow us to grow over time. And that's what we have done. We've been able to reduce our structural deficit by $300 million in this year. The city's bond rating increased to a AA-, this first increase in more than 7 years. Our success didn't happen without seeking input from Baltimore City residents. Families across Baltimore have to balance their budgets each and every day. They struggle to make ends meet with what seems like less and less money. They can't afford to go over budget, neither should the government pretend as though we can move forward under a different set of rules. It's important that people understand that we are doing that same exercise over just a different kitchen table. We have to behave the same way everyone else does. So today we are announcing our latest effort to include the public in some difficult decisions ahead in balancing Baltimore's budget. With Budget Live, Baltimore's residents will have an open and readily available portal to view our budget, to ask questions, to share their input, and to tell us how they would make difficult budget decisions that we face. We're asking residents to help us move Baltimore forward on the right path and to make the right investments to grow our city. This new interactive process gives citizens the opportunity to speak directly to their government about the areas where they want to see us invest more and the areas where they want to see us cut waste. Together, I know that we can fulfill the promise of a more efficient and transparent government, and we can make the decisions necessary to grow our city. So I am urging residents to visit Budget Live and participate in our interactive budget experience. Am I making budgeting sound exciting? Which will be open until January the 30th, 2015. So you have just a little over a month to participate in this interactive experience. I want Baltimore to be the model for citizen engagement as we work to confront our budget challenges, both here and at home. At the state and federal level, I believe very strongly that citizens should have a voice and that we should not only hear them but work with them. And using technology to provide that voice will help Baltimore to grow well into the future. I'm proud because each year when we have this conversation about the budget and what we're doing moving forward, I always challenge my team to come up with new and different ways to provide more engagement with our citizens, to take advantage of the new and growing technology so we can do a better job of connecting with citizens. And I think that with the new Budget Live, we continue to do that. So with that, I say thank you, and I will introduce Budget Director Andrew Klein, who will talk a little bit about the website and I think give a demonstration.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning. So I'd like to walk you through Budget Live. We're launching here from the Bureau of the Budget and Management Research homepage, chock full of information in addition to Budget Live. You can also launch onto Budget Live from the city's homepage, and Kirsten's going to show that. So that's up now. So starting from the BBMR page, we have, go ahead and, so just a little message up front, and then we have an infographic, just some basic information about the fiscal 2015 budget, our current budget. You can get more information about that through our Citizens Guide, which is on the BBMR homepage. There's also a link to it through Budget Live. We've included on here a video providing information about the city's fiscal outlook and our budget process. And we're not going to watch that video right now, but it's narrated by yours truly. We tried to get James Earl Jones, but he wasn't available. So okay, so we have the information about the fiscal outlook. Then we can go to Balance Baltimore. So we introduced this last year. This is the updated version of our budget exercise, where we invite citizens to try their hand at balancing the budget, look at the trade-offs. We have a disclaimer here that's important. The options that are presented are illustrative. They're not necessarily options that are under active consideration by the administration, but they are. There are options that come up when we have our everything's on the table exercises. So they're not completely out of left field, but we have tabs for each of the mayor's priority outcomes. And we can just show you under Safer Streets a couple options. One, we have the body camera program as an ad. So you add that, and you can see we're starting with a $30 million projected shortfall. Adding the body cameras takes that to 35. So we can also, so for each service that's presented, you have an option to enhance a service, add to a service, and reduce spending. And here's one about reducing the police helicopter fleet from 4 to 3. And so you can see again how that impacts the deficit. Once you're done, you submit. Now, sometimes when you submit, you get thrown a curveball. So in this case, housing market slows. So now we're expecting lower property tax revenue. You got to go back and find another $4 million. And this is just to simulate the kinds of things that we do face as we put a budget together. Things are constantly changing. So I think if you go to, I wanted to show where people can give their comments when you're ultimately submitting. We ask for a little bit of demographic information and an opportunity to say whatever you want to us. Maybe there are other options you would like to propose, or let us know how much fun you had doing this. And then you submit, and we compile that information and report it to the mayor before she makes her budget decisions. So that's Balance Baltimore. We also have this year crowdsourcing. So we're going to put questions out to people, get discussion going. The first question is, if the city's budget was $100, how would you allocate it by priority outcome? So we want to see where people's priorities are and how they would divvy up the budget at a high level. And then we'll also be adding questions as we go along. And that may be based on feedback we get from citizens and questions that we get asked through this site. Another new feature this year is Open Budget. This is an opportunity to dive into the details of the current budget, the fiscal 15 budget. So we're starting here, total operating budget. We're going to go into Stronger Neighborhoods priority outcome. Shows you which agencies have services that are funded within that outcome. We're going to Recreation and Parks, and we're going to take a look now. We're looking at the services, the Recreation and Park services that are under the Stronger Neighborhoods priority outcome, and we're going to drill into park maintenance at a $10 million budget. now we have the activities within that service. And this is showing you for this service where the funding is coming from. You can see it's primarily the general fund, but there's some state funding also involved. And if we drill into Druid Hill Park District, about $1.3 million, then we get down to the actual sub-object detail. So you're seeing salaries, benefits, contractual services, materials and supplies, et cetera. You can see the budget at that level of detail. So it's taking the huge budget book and making it much more interactive. And this is just the start. We plan to enhance this site, provide more historical budget information. But right now we have the fiscal 15 detail loaded in there and open for people to look at. We also, what's next? This is just a calendar of upcoming milestones in the process. I mentioned the Citizens Guide. We have a link to that here. That's a great document. I'll show you what it looks like in hard copy, this book. And we have, I want people to stay tuned. We're going to have 2 mayor's budget workshops in January, so dates and locations will be announced for that soon. And then this goes on through preliminary budget, taxpayer night, submission of the budget to the council, et cetera. And we also have a section here about questions. So we've put up some frequently asked questions, and then we also have an opportunity for people to submit questions to us, and we're pledging a response within 2 business days. And if we're getting the same question multiple times, we will add a frequently asked question to this list and keep that updated. And if you go back to the Budget Live homepage, I also want to put in a plug for our Twitter feed at Baltimore Budget. We have it live here on the site. There's the mayor and me in the background. So that's a place to just see the most recent information about the budget process and what we're up to in BBMR. And so that's our site. We're very excited. Every year, as you know, we try to enhance the citizen experience. The mayor, it's a big priority for the mayor, and so we're following her lead in becoming more engaged with citizens. And so we look forward to a lot of participation on this site. We hope you'll help us get the word out about it. And as we've seen in the past, the citizen's voice makes a big difference in our budget process. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions, or if you have questions for the mayor.
With all of the data on it after the comment period is?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
But we're gonna cut off like the Balanced Baltimore exercise January 30th. Like open budget, that'll be there. All that other information will stay.
So you started off with Balanced Baltimore last year. Budget Live, would it be fair to say that's an expansion on the interaction and?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, big expansion. We have, just putting everything in one place is important. But having, we have the video that provides information about the fiscal outlook. We haven't had that kind of thing before. Asking these questions, the crowdsourcing function. Open budget is brand new. We've been working on that the past several months. And so we have a number of new features. But we're going to continue. We know not everyone's online, so we're going to continue having live budget workshops. And some of you have been to our budget workshops, and they're not the traditional open mic town hall meeting. You have to, when you come, you roll up your sleeves, you get involved, you work as a team, and you look at trade-offs and help build a budget, the way we do in City Hall. And the mayor, I know she's always there and goes around and hears about the struggles people have with making ends meet in the budget process. So. And that's part of the purpose, is educate people about the tough choices and then hear how they would make them.
So last year when the public participated in the trade-off section, did you all, were you able to incorporate any kind of real decisions into the budget based on that?
So just to kind of give an overview of what we've consistently heard from citizens over the years, citizens tell us that public safety is priority number one, particularly reducing gun violence. But they want to see investments to prevent crime, so youth opportunity centers, after-school programs. They also have told us consistently they want to protect funding for neighborhood infrastructure and amenities, things like street lighting, street resurfacing, park maintenance, swimming pools, cleaning and boarding of vacant properties. They're less supportive of services that impact neighborhoods less directly. So things like traffic management, even job training, tree maintenance are not as popular. They tell us they don't want to pay more taxes. And they're very supportive of innovative ways of reducing costs and generating revenue, including partnering more with community groups. So whether it be helping to maintain parks or remove graffiti, those kinds of things. Putting advertising on city buildings. Automating labor-intensive functions. I mean, they react positively to things like that. And then they've also consistently said they want the city to be accountable for how it spends its money. We noticed last year they really like the Inspector General, and they'd rather see us save money by streamlining administrative services and reforming employee benefits than by cutting services. So those are the kinds of things that we hear from them and that guide us in our budget making.
What was the level of participation last year, and do you have any kind of expectations?
I think we had 600 complete the Balance Baltimore site. I'm expecting more. We got some good press, thanks to you guys, for our citizen survey this year, and we had over 1,000 responses to the citizen survey, which is way more than we'd ever had before. So I'm hopeful that we will really bump those numbers up this year. And I think having this central place for people to go will help push more people to the site also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and I want to thank you all for your questions, and I really encourage you to push the word out and encourage people to participate. This is the way this works is when we hear from more people. So hopefully we'll get citizens and students, and everyone will have their voice heard and help us to make the best decisions to help us to move the city forward.
Does the city have a number on police overtime for the year?
Well, we have.
I thought I read somewhere that it's about set a record.
Well, our first quarter projection was that it would be 38 million, but some things have happened since then that we think are going to bring that number significantly down. One is that the phased initiative overtime was ended as of early October. When we were doing our budget projection, that was still ongoing. We also didn't have a date at that time for the implementation of the new police schedule, and because of that uncertainty and our inherent conservatism in making budget projections, we assume that the schedule may not be in place until late in the fiscal year, but it's scheduled to go into effect in January, and the way that's designed, it should significantly reduce overtime. So I'm hopeful that number will come down below 30 million, maybe significantly below 30 million for the full fiscal year. But we're going to do our second quarter projections in January, and we're going to take, obviously, as we always do, take a very hard look at that particular area of spending.
Alrighty. Any other questions?
Yes. I'd like to ask you a couple of things about the police shooting that happened on Sunday evening. First of all, just the comment that was made by the commissioner that kind of stepped into both the shooting itself as well as against the backdrop of the national debate, protests, et cetera, that are going on. Do you support his voicing his opinion in that matter?
I understand in the heat of the moment, the commissioner said something that I don't think was the most productive thing in light of what's going on in Baltimore and nationally. But I understand, you know, when an officer is shot, it is a very emotional experience. The waiting room was filled with officers that are Andrew's coworkers. Each of them know that in the normal course of their performing their daily duties, it could have been them that was shot. It was there was a lot of anxiety, concern, and very raw emotion, and I understand that. That being said, the fact that officers put their lives on the line every day when they go into work is a serious issue. It's a different issue than the police misconduct issue, the in custody death, and the issue of racial prejudice and bias that are the issues that are fueling those and other issues that are fueling the national debate and protests. And I think it's not very productive to mix the two, because it has the potential to diminish both of them, and they are both very serious topics that that deserve the individual to be respected separately.
Do you have concern that officers are, well, you've actually addressed this, that, you know, in some of your prior comments that you talk about rebuilding trust in communities, that that officers are not, when they're arresting someone, it's not arresting. I think you did that one. Mm-hmm. But are you concerned that against this kind of backdrop and this climate, there's an awful lot of tension that's visible, that officers are at greater risk?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think that it's understandable if they feel at greater risk. I think we are in, for our generation, for many of those who are active on the street, uncharted territory. You know, there's a lot of unease, and you know, people want to make sure that a lot of officers I've heard said, not just in Baltimore, but you know, nationally, when I talk to other mayors, you know, they want to make sure that they get it right. But there's that fear that can crop up when they're trying to perform their duty. They don't want to be the next, you know, Darren Wilson. You know, they want to make sure that they are doing everything right in that moment, and they also fear that, you know, I have heard, and this is not, you know, Baltimore, this is in talking to other mayors, that the officers are have some concerns that they might put themselves at risk put their lives at risk in trying to make sure that they're not fully address the issues that are, you know, facing them.
The facts appear to be on Sunday night, and actually we have video where you can see everybody. It does not appear that any of the officers returned fire. Do you think that has something to do with the?
Yeah, it's too early to tell.
The other thing I'd like to ask about that is that it now seems that there was a very good opportunity for the probation system to have this individual off the street in June, mm-hmm. If they had gotten the process right. How do you respond to that?
I think it is important, as we learn everything we can from this incident, that each part of the criminal justice system takes a look at their role in what happened, and if it means that parole and probation, or what, you know, everyone, every point of contact needs to figure out if there are things that they could do better. And I'm sure that that they're evaluating their procedures and you know, tightening up their practices as well.
let's shift gears on you completely here. With the announcement of the development of 300 East Pratt, former News American building, going for Light Street, we're seeing a lot of parking lots being developed here in downtown. Do you see any kind of particular development that you would like to see in these areas moving forward, beyond just hotels or apartments?
I think as I look toward having a more vibrant city and having a sustainable model, we haven't reached, I believe, the saturation point of residential. And with the strength of our hospitality and tourism industry, I think that it makes sense that investors are seeing potential in more hotel rooms as that industry continues to thrive. So I think it's certainly headed in the right direction. I think the lessons to learn from urban development is to have an active street level, and I hope that we continue to plan for that in the developments, because it's one thing to have to have an increase in residential, but if we don't continue to add amenities for those residents, it's not going to be a complete community. And I think we've seen growth in the downtown. It's the fastest growing neighborhood per the census tract, but we need to make sure that that we are, like I said, doing complete communities and making it a more active neighborhood 24 hours a day.
Last question.
Did you, by the way, State Center is not on the Board of Public Works today. It looks like that deal might not happen. Have you discussed it with the Housing Administration? Where do you think it is right now?
I can't say where it is right now. I can say that I've discussed it, and I've discussed the imperative that something move forward there. It's too large of a site. It's a very old office building that won't. It's running its course on its useful life. It's too big of an area to only be active 8:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. We have to do better for those communities, and my goal is to work with this new administration to find something that works. And I've been very vocal in support of the State Center project because I know what it means for the impacted communities. I know it means job creation. I know that it will add many amenities that the community believes that they deserve, and I'm going to fight for them to get it. So I've made it very clear to Governor-elect Hogan that this is an important project for the city, and I'm going to continue to work to try to make sure that the State Center site is redeveloped.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Merry Christmas.